if I hadn't embraced personal growth, if I hadn't improved myself, I would literally just don't be here. Everybody around us has so much potential, but most people, they never actually unlock that. This is who I am. This is who I'm not. When you know your values and what you stand for and who you want to be and who you are. So when you live your life at the whims of what other people say about you, you're not really living your life. You're living the life that you think is acceptable.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Art of It podcast. I'm excited for you to learn alongside myself from today's guest. Years of being bullied completely restored his confidence, self-esteem, and social skills. My guest was on the verge of committing suicide, but instead embraced personal growth. Through a decade of trial and error, he managed to rebuild himself completely from the broken pieces. Today, his purpose is to share personal development lessons that actually work in real life. His approach to personal development is about understanding and practicality. Please help me in welcoming to the show, Maikel.
Hey there, it's great to be here. And thanks for the invitation for the podcast. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything that you would like to say to the audience for them to get to know you better?
There's a lot of ways I can go with this, but I would say that personal growth is something that's very dear to me. And that's why we're here to talk about it. Because if I hadn't embraced personal growth, if I hadn't improved myself, I would literally just don't be here. So that's something that I think is very core to me and that I wish upon everybody. Because I know, and you probably know as well, everybody around us has so much potential, but most people, they never actually unlock that. So that's why I think it's so important to have these kinds of conversations around personal development, about overcoming your obstacles, overcoming your fears. And that has basically been the story for at least half of my life.
Wow, I think that's powerful. And for the first question on the podcast, I think we're going to get right to it. So the first question is, what would you say that has been the hardest moment in your life where you felt like the whole world was upside down?
Maybe not upside down, but definitely that the whole world was against me. When you're being bullied, that's the impression you get at some point. Because, like, I was a child. I didn't have the understanding I have right now at 32 years old. So for me, the people around me, that was the world. And when those people reject you, or you're not part of the group, or you feel like you're an outsider, or you're being rejected, a lot of these things happen. And at some point, you start to believe them. That is the worst part of it. You have those voices from other people, but at some point, they became part of my own voice as well. And that's where you sink deeper and deeper and deeper into self-doubt, into worry, into insecurity. And that is the thing that really, if we're thinking about it, ruined my confidence. It wasn't just the things they said. It was that I started to take them in and make them part of myself. So I would say that that was a very difficult period of my life. And that is also what got me started on this journey of personal growth as well.
I think that's an important aspect that we should all take into account, because it's not only, yes, you might say that the words outside might not matter, but someday they're gonna start getting inside of you, and you're gonna say to yourself, like, if people are saying you're ugly, you're gonna look in the mirror, you're gonna say to yourself, "You're ugly." No, you're not, right? But that mechanic of people talking to you like that is gonna get inside of you. And I think that's an important point that you're bringing today, and I hope that we get to unravel that as long as we get far we get in the podcast. So
Yeah, can I say one thing about that?
go ahead.
You say, well, for example, if people say you're ugly and you look in the mirror. But what if I told you right now that I think your purple hair looks absolutely ridiculous? It is terrible. How do you feel about that?
Well, since I don't have purple hair, I don't feel really
Yes.
affected. But if I did, I would be, you know, I will take it and like as a hit, because it's hitting my like personal taste of, because I decided to to dye my hair purple.
Yeah, exactly. But you hit the nail on the head. You don't have purple hair, so it doesn't affect you. And that's the thing with a lot of the insults and the mean comments you get from other people. If it actually hurts you, there is at least a small part of you, or maybe a big part of you, that believes it's true. That is the most devastating part of this. So really, maybe I'm jumping a bit ahead, but when you can find yourself and know this is who I am, this is who I'm not, when you know your values and what you stand for and who you want to be and who you are, the better you are in that foundation, the more grounded it is, the less the comments from the outside world are going to affect you because you know who you are. Just like if someone says, oh, you're a loser, but you know yourself, it's going to bounce off. Just like when someone says, oh, your purple hair sucks, but you know you don't have purple hair. I think that is one of the core foundations of building your self image and your self esteem and your confidence.
And usually in a journey, we have someone that pushes us, that helped us get out of our unique storm. That's why I call the podcast Out of the Gray, because those difficult moments I call them storms, right? So, was there someone in your journey that helped you gain that confidence and see the person that you really are instead of seeing the person that you weren't?
Mm, I mean, yes and no. For me, the people who guided me, I sought them out through blog posts, and YouTube was just starting up. This was like 16 years ago or something. So I really didn't have anyone in my area to really talk to. I did have therapy for maybe a year or two, but that I never felt like I got anything out of that. But most of it was coming from reading blog posts, trying to implement it, failing to implement it because there was a lot of stuff that didn't work, and then trying again. But at least this process of learning, of listening, of taking in information, I felt like I had more control over my life. And I think that was the thing that really flipped it around and made it so that I can actually move forward. Because if I had never re-gotten that feeling that my future could get better than my past, I would have never made all of those actions to actually change. And I think that's a powerful starting point.
For me, when I went through my journey, someone that helped me was Tony Robbins, right? So it's not only about the people that we have around us that can help us, but an example of you and I, we both needed help and we sought it out in books, right? In your example, blog post, YouTube videos, other things, right? We have that
Exactly.
capability. And right now, in an age where everything is online, we have the power of using that into our advantage. So I think it's an important point that we set out for that if you need help, right, you not only have, like in this case, Michael and I to ask for help, right? You have the whole world at your hands, right? You can look at the
Exactly. Yeah.
information and see what you need help with. And Michael, and think you answered this, but what is the biggest lesson that you learned in that journey?
There's quite a few. If there's one thing, I would say to trust in myself. Because looking back in hindsight, I had a lot of ideas that I never really put into action or that I quit because I was afraid of what other people were going to say about it. So when you live your life at the whims of what other people say about you, you're not really living your life. You're living the life that you think is acceptable. I would have told myself that I need to do the things that I know were right, even when in doubt, even when people go against you, even when a million voices are screaming no. Because I, in hindsight, realized that I was on the right path, but I didn't have the courage back then, didn't have the confidence back then to actually go through with it because I was afraid of getting rejected, of not being part of the group. And if I had the courage back then to go through with it, life would have been like completely different right now.
I completely agree. Sometimes we try to blend in with the people that are around us, but it's gonna kill us at some point because we're killing ourselves. We're killing our true selves. So, and even though you might come to become that person that they they are seeking for, right? But things change. So you have to continue to change. And that is not something that we should seek, which is always constant change towards society. No, we should always be ourselves, right? And the people around us, they should be built around who we are, who we want to be
Agree.
represented, right? Because if I were to go around people and all my friends were drinkers, smokers, doing bad things, how would I, right, be, you know, uh, connected to them? I will be connected to
Yeah.
them.
You're gonna be the next like that.
Yeah. So we have to be careful who surround us because also who surround us is going to be the people talking into our ear. And it's not only the story that we tell to the other side of the world, it's a story that we tell ourselves about who we are. And if you keep changing yourself and you're not yourself, you're actually crumpling yourself. And at some point, you're going to break it. And that is when self help is going to be difficult to get. So we're trying to help you understand that the don't chase for something that others want. Chase for what you want. And that is going to make some changes. It's going to bring new friends, going to take out some friends in your life. But that change is important because if you don't, you're going to crumple yourself at some point.
Oh yeah, 100%. And one thing I want everyone to understand here, like you said before, Tony Robbins was a key person in your life, and he's meant a lot for me as well. So those people around you, they don't always have to be the people around you physically. That can mean listening to a podcast like, I don't know, Out of the Grey, maybe. And then one thing I will give here is to actually spend some time with just this, just the thoughts in your own head, to spend some time with introspection. Because you say to be the person that you are, but most people don't even know who that person is because we're constantly waking up, phone, going and having breakfast, like brushing your teeth, stuff like that, going to work, spending 8, 9 hours there, driving back, having dinner, and then television, Netflix. There's so many distractions that we cannot even hear our own self. It is being quieted all the time. And all of those things, your phone, games, like music, and a lot of these other vices, they are distraction mechanisms because there's things inside of us that we don't really want to face, that we don't want to um, like listen to. But I would encourage you to sit. And when, for example, you've had a moment where you wanted to take action on something, but you didn't, sit down. No distractions, no phone, no nothing. Ask yourself, why? What was it that really held me back? Why didn't I go through with this? And then you shut up and you let your mind bring those things to the surface. Because that is a process that's been very foundational for me. And that's really helped me to understand why I was doing certain things and why I wasn't moving forward. So I think that's something that everyone can do today. Just take 15 or 20 minutes, just sit in silence, think about some of these things. And that's how you find yourself.
Yeah. I think, you hit the right on the nail, right? I think, for example, for me at least, I'm still trying to seek myself. And it's something that I have to keep doing because you're right. We are in a world full of distractions, right? A notification is going to take you away from, for example, for me doing the podcast to looking at my phone, right? We are always being distracted by something, right? And we have to be careful in how much we let it affect our life. And life right now is just continuous, right? Wake up, go to work, go to sleep. But if we try and look for that in ourselves in quietness, because that's when we are able to think straight, right? We're gonna be able to find that person that who we are and maybe finding who we are. can give you a purpose in what to do next in your life. So I think those are important points that are key into knowing who we are. And that goes into my next question. You talk about how important it is for someone to find their underlying problem inside their mind. How can someone do that?
I think it's part of this introspection process and asking that why question. Because when we freeze up, for example, and I'll give you an example from personal life in a moment, but when we freeze up, our instinct tells us to look for what next. So, for example, I see this pretty girl I want to approach. I feel my heart pounding out of my chest, and I don't do it. My question is now, what can I do? What can I say? How can I approach? But yada, 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 yada. But in reality, try to pause and ask, why do I feel so hesitant to go up to her right now? And this like process of introspection, of maybe meditation, that's one of the things that can help you to get to the bottom of this. So, for example, for most of my life, I had trouble with like walking up to a girl and talking to her. Want to know where it came from? It's actually very like strange and doesn't really make sense if you think about this logically. But what I found through this process is that when I was about 4 or 5 years old, there was a girl in my class in like, what is it, kindergarten, first grade, whatever. And I had a crush on her. But people, they found out about it. And what do you do when you're like 5 years old and a guy has a crush on a girl? Maikel likes this girl, na 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 na. Right? A lot of this teasing. And you're smiling, I'm smiling, because we know as adults that it is innocent, that it is harmless. But to a child, a lot of these things, they feel different because the people around you in your class, they are the world. And your understanding of this is just some pleasant teasing versus this is like the survival instinct kicks in. It's like people don't approve of this side of me. So if I continue with this, I'm not going to be part of the group. I'm just basically, my mind's going to catastrophize it and say, well, guess I'll die. That is the assumption your mind makes when you're not part of the group or you're not fitting in. And so I made the connection. If I express interest into a girl, I'm not going to be part of the group. I'm going to be left out. I'm going to be rejected. And I'm not going to survive. And so that's something that haunted me for more than 2 decades afterwards. And it was something that started when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Now you're making me wonder if I'm doing something like that. Now
We're
I'm
all,
wondering.
we're all doing things.
Yeah, for me, you know, you hit it right on the nail again. I think it's important for us to look back because sometimes our actions are premeditated to what happened before. I would say that it still happens to me right after my surgeries and everything. I sometimes find myself doing what I was used to do after surgery, or sometimes I wonder, and I don't know if it makes me weird, but I miss some things that happen during or after the surgeries. So, and sometimes that comes into effect into our decision making. Sometimes we have things in our past that are evolving into our present decisions, and I think it's important for us to block those. You have to think about them, but you have to think, okay, is this actually helping me or not? If it is
Yeah,
helping
absolutely.
you, okay, keep it going. But sometimes, like going to a girl, right? If we keep stopping ourselves, nothing's gonna happen, right? And we might be rejected once, but that doesn't mean we're gonna be rejected 1,000 times. There's gonna be one yes, right?
Yeah. And you only need one.
And you only need one. That's correct. So we have to keep thinking about it, right? If we keep thinking about it, sorry, it's gonna kill us at some point. So we have to destroy that line of work and continue to work towards our better self. So, what are some helpful tips you can give someone that is struggling from a lack of self confidence?
Um, there's a lot. So in my philosophy, I have 6 pillars that build up unshakable confidence. I think there's a few starting points that we talked about. So for me, the thing that kept me going was that I took back a sense of control over my life and I set a vision for my future. So if you don't have anything that you're working towards, no goals, no outlook of a better future, life is going to feel meaningless. And that's because you haven't given meaning to it. That's the thing. I call this blissful nihilism, meaning that life is meaningless, which is the nihilism part. But that also means that you decide what the meaning is for you. And when you don't give meaning, when you don't have a purpose, when you have nothing to strive for, it's going to feel empty. As a result, you will feel empty. So I think that's one of the starting points. Then it is also, who am I really? And who do I want to be? So this is thinking, for example, of making a list of all the people you admire and then writing down, why specifically do I admire them? So for my example, for example, I could look at someone like Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him,
Sounds
but he's
familiar.
like, yeah, like this guy's built, I don't know, dozens of companies, like very like influential in the business world, tens of millions of followers. But he's also very kind. He's also very empathetic. He's also very curious. So would write down Gary Vaynerchuk and then curiosity, relentlessness, humility. And I write down a lot of these virtues and you make a list. And then you're like, if I could only have 5 of these, which one do I really want to have as my own? And that gets you started on this journey of, who am I really? What do I value at the very core? And when you know who you are, who you're not, a lot of the outside world is going to be less influential to you because you don't need their approval or rejection to know who you are. And then another pillar of this would be to actually start making progress towards that ideal self, to become the person that you can actually trust, that you can feel proud of. And this can start on just one day. So, for example, for today, when your head hits the pillow at night, when you go to bed, do you feel proud of yourself in that day? Do you feel like you've either let yourself down or that you helped yourself? And the more days you can string together where you feel good about who you are and what you did, the better and more confident you're going to be. So these are like the top of the mountains of a few of those pillars. But I think together they can make a huge impact. And that's something you can start with today.
And talking about something that you can start today, you don't have to start big, right? I'm
Yes.
currently reading a book called Tiny Habits.
Oh, yeah.
And that book, the, the main topic is you can start any habit or stop any bad habit by doing something small. So you don't have to make a big change, right? It might be instead of, going into bed watching Netflix, right? You might be reading for the last 10 minutes before you go to bed, right? That is something small change that you can do that's going to make you feel better. And another thing they say is that if you accomplish that tiny habit, celebrate it. Because if you celebrate, it's
Yes.
a mechanism in your head that is going to keep doing it. So yeah, I think it's important for us to find that purpose, because once we have that purpose, we are driven. I think you have a purpose of helping as many people as possible, as am I, right? So even
Yeah, I
every
think,
day, if we take a step towards that goal, we're gonna feel great, right? We're gonna feel like we're conquering the whole world, and even though we just, had 2 views on the video, right? But if you have it on your mind the idea of helping as many people as possible, right? That's something that's gonna motivate you to move towards every single day. So I think that's an important point that you bring up, and I'm glad that I see you today with the self confidence that you have. Right, and not a lot of people make it out of those big struggles. I commend you
exactly.
for that. So I'm glad and thank God that you're here today spreading this, because I know you're gonna help somebody out there, and I wish the best for you in the future, because I know a lot of people need that help in self confidence. I struggled with self confidence after my first surgery, but after I learned a lot, I read and I heard from people, I had that self confidence into doing this podcast and to writing my own book about my journey. So we have to keep going because if we stop, we're never going to know if we're going to get there or not. So I think that's an important point that, everybody today. And thank you, Michael, once again for coming here and sharing your knowledge. So Michael, I don't know if I'm saying your name right. I hope I am.
Mike, and then Michiels as my last name. And by the way, I can actually see that you're enjoying this, that you're confident yourself. So I'm not sure, of course, what your journey has looked like, but like I can see the result. And even like a few years from now, it's going to be 10 times better because these things, they go exponentially. And to the listeners, by the way, you can listen back to what he just said. That part of starting small and then celebrating the wins, getting a bit of momentum, trying slightly bigger things, and then gaining more momentum, but celebrating each of those wins along the way, even if they're small, just those small changes on a daily basis. That was literally a masterclass in personal development, something I teach myself. So I'm like glad I'm not the only outcast talking about these kind of things. But yeah, that's very powerful stuff. If you're not doing something like that already, try it. So for example, I'll give you one quick example of how I did that myself. Because this is like a decade ago, I had this idea of writing a blog. But then I also told myself, today I'm going to write this 2000 word article. And most of the time, I didn't do it. So I switched that up and I said, I'm just going to write 2 paragraphs. Very easy. And then if I have done that, I'm off the hook. That made the barrier to entry way lower. And then you're writing and you're typing, and suddenly 2 paragraphs become 3, become 5, become 10, become like 20. And suddenly you have the article. But not because you set out writing the article, because you started with a tiny habit of writing something every day. That is the key lesson here.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I started writing my book, and if I went on to say that I'm going to write a 50-page book in 2 days, that's likely not going to happen because I'm myself not a writer, right? And if you do something that you don't enjoy, there's not going to be any motivation behind it, right? And it's going to fail quickly. So I decided to write every single day a little bit. I say 10 pages, right? And I set out that goal and I accomplished my goal of finishing the book earlier than expected. So we have to see those little things that are gonna build up to be a huge thing. Right now in your life, what you're doing is does not seem big, but it's gonna be turn out one day to be big. But you have to wait, and keep working because if you stop working, nothing's gonna work. Right? I have a quote that I like. It says, "The only time success comes before work is in the dictionary."
Very true. And so actually for me, I've had the same thing because I just look back later and the first, like some of the earliest YouTube videos I ever made was like 2014, like 12 years ago. But I quit that because I didn't see the progress. And one thing I would have told myself in hindsight was to keep going because in hindsight, there were these small changes of seeing some growth. So if I had stuck with it for 2 years instead of 6 months, it would probably have taken off because the competition back then was so it was very low compared to what it is now. And then for years of my life afterwards, I didn't do anything like that. And if I had just stuck with it, even with small actions, even without consistency, the time period over which you're doing something, that matters. So even just a little bit of progress today can make a huge difference later on. So don't cut yourself short. I know a mentor of mine, I follow online, Ty Lopez. He once said you can have anything that you want, but expect it to take 2 to 5 years longer than you want it to take. Not in total, just longer. A lot of these things, Start very small. You don't see the progress. And then suddenly you get that hockey stick effect. But you need to stick it out long enough to get to that point.
Yeah, how many years do you think it took Tony Robbins to become the person that he is today? Many,
Yeah.
many.
He's been doing
Gary,
it for like 5 months.
Gary Vaynerchuk, right? He took many years to be the person that he is today. Right? Don't compare yourself to somebody that is 20, 30 years ahead. Right? Compare yourself to the person you were yesterday. Is it a better person? If you're a better person today than yesterday, you're doing good. Right? So that's that, continuing to improve yourself every single day. And tomorrow is going to be better. Right? But if you keep thinking negatively, nothing's going to happen. And it might happen. And life is, I talk this in my book, but life, I say, is like a exponential line. I'm talking a little bit math here, right? At first, it doesn't seem like the slope is a big one, right? But then it increases a lot, the slope, right? So you might be stopping at the corner point or where the slope is going to rise exponentially, right? If you invest in compound interest, the interest is not much in the first years. But if you do 30 years, that $100 that you put a month is going to turn out to be millions of dollars. So we have to be patient.
Exactly. Yeah. One thing here, actually, two things. Firstly, thank you for triggering PTSD for high school math. I hated that subject. But then also, the other thing here is that sometimes that 1% better, it doesn't feel like 1% better. It feels like 10 or 20% worse. Because when you're on a path of growing, you're going to have to do new things, uncomfortable things. And so that fear of and self-doubt, that can spike up. So personal growth, we sometimes, a lot of people talk about it like it's this airy fairy thing where you're constantly feeling better. But that is the exponential part. Before that, it's gonna be like ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs. So still, if I like use a video game analogy, when you improve, you can slay a certain boss, but the next boss is still gonna be bigger and better. And the frustration when you like lose the first time or the second time, or when I was playing Dark Souls, even the 20th time, that is still not gonna feel good. So yes, that's just a little bit better every day, that's gonna add up. But don't be frustrated or don't be don't give up when it doesn't feel like you're actually growing, because you are. But the setbacks, the struggle, the pain, the frustration, the feeling like you're running into a brick wall, those are also part of it. That doesn't mean that you're not growing. That means that you're, that actually means that you're growing, but that it doesn't feel like growth every, say, single day of your life. Keep going, be patient, and make those small changes every day.
Great. Great. I'm sorry that I brought the math analogy to you. I'm bringing PTSD.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I like math. I grew up with math. My mom is a teacher, math teacher. So it's part of me. But I think it's important what you said, because it's not only because we learn in one challenge one thing, but what we learn in that challenge is going to help us overcome the next challenge. Right? You learn something in beating the first boss that's going to help you beat the second boss. Right? And when you beat the second boss, you're going to learn something new that's going to help you beat the third boss. Talking about the video game analogy. So, like you said, we have to be patient. We have to think ourselves and put ourselves in a better place of just doing one day at a time and becoming better one day at a time. And with that, Maikel, can you please tell the people where they can follow you?
Yeah, the best place would be on YouTube, which is where I publish my long form videos. I also do like shorts on Instagram and that kind of stuff. But I would say get something longer, because that depth and understanding is crucial. Because first you understand how a certain process works in your mind, And then you can work on solving an issue. Without the understanding, nothing's going to work. So for the long form videos, I would say go to YouTube and just search for my name, Maikel Michiels. And then we talked a bit about confidence. I'm actually just putting together the straight line confidence system as a free training that should be hopefully up in a few days. And you can get that when you go to michaelmichiels.com/confidence. And that's just a free training of about an hour, including workbook, that's going to help you with the quickest way to start building confidence. So that's absolutely free if you just go to my website and enter your name and email address, and you can get that.
Who doesn't like free stuff? So I will leave all those links down in the description so that not only you guys, the audience, but for me as well, so that we can keep growing. So don't forget, I'm gonna leave all those links down in the description so that you can go to Maikel's YouTube channel and Maikel's page, so you can go to that free training and gain knowledge in that. So, Maikel, before we go, is there anything else you would like to leave the audience?
I would say, first of all, of course, like, you're doing great for listening to this. That's already one of those small changes we talked about. Because you could have been watching cat videos or watching Netflix or watching a ton of other garbage. But you're here listening to us to actually improve your life and yourself. So what I would challenge you to do is, before the day is over, think of just one thing. Make one promise to yourself of, today, I'm going to do this small step. And make sure you do that today.
And celebrate.
And then tomorrow, see if you can do the same thing. Like, it's technically simple, but staying with this consistently, that is the key. So just try and get that momentum started today, not tomorrow.
Perfect. Wiser words couldn't be said. So I want to thank you, Maikel, for coming in here in the podcast again. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I hope that in the future, and God bless you, so that you can keep helping people grow their self confidence. I think that's something that the world needs right now. And hopefully in the future, we can do a second podcast. I really like this one. I really enjoy it. And I think the audience hopefully learns something new that they can try today to improve 1% at a time. So thank you so much for listening.
100%.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming to the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with the people that you love, so that we can keep spreading knowledge and we can become better every single day. Take care, guys. God bless.